Okay, we'll start this way round. So these are our questions from the tables for the panel. We'll go around the tables, get some questions, and then you guys can take your time over answering them. I'm going to restrict Nick to one of the 7 questions she wants to ask.
Okay, I'll make it a good one. Right, we want to know what the single best adaptation you can make to your home, which costs the least with the greatest benefits.
That's 3 of the questions. You cheated. Kelly.
We only have one question. What educational information is available for builders or homeowners on sustainable options when retrofitting or building houses?
Thank you very much. Catherine, where do you go?
Thank you. We've got how much or in what ways can the council influence retrofitting of privately owned homes or privately built new builds?
Thank you very much. Ella?
We had a lot of confusion on this table. I don't know if that was widespread around the room, but there was lots of questions about cost and what was possible. However, we've come up with, I'll choose one, but would it be possible to study do a cost-benefit analysis of the potential of retrofitting across the city, because it was not clear to us to what extent you could retrofit and where and how, etc.
Interesting how we're getting the homes and everyone's talking about costs.
We were running out of time, so the key questions here were: why aren't building regulations tighter and can they be improved? And linked to that, how can construction workmanship be improved?
Thank you very much. And a final question. Isabella.
Isn't a final question at all. We echoed Catherine's group in wanting to know more about the levers that the council had to put pressure on private landlords.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Over to the panel. Forest of hands shoot up. Who wants to answer first? Anyone got an answer to any of those questions? Rajat, you go.
Okay, I can start. I'm going to pick up the question on the construction work quality, because I think that's very close to my heart actually. This matters because if retrofits are not done properly, you're going to have more problems that you had before. And the way it's happening now, is through standards like PAS 2035, where quality assurance is being built into the whole process. There is a role, it's called Retrofit Coordinator, which has been created to have contacts with all the parties who are involved in the retrofit, making sure the work is happening as expected. And we also need to build in simple things like thermal imaging that I showed you, where you can look at how the building is performing. Simple things such as air tightness tests, so we know what we are getting is what we expect. I think one of the things we forget is that our home is the biggest investment of our life, and we should get what we are paying for. So in that sense, I think that really will make a difference. I think the other thing about what levers council has for both private homeowners and landlords, I think there is this kind of legislation required in now which says you can't let homes which are FNG rated, isn't it, from this April? And I think that's going to be ratcheted up to C and D maybe. And I think we need a long-term plan for that, because EPC or energy performance certificates which are created when homes are built, or any building that's built, refurbished, let or sold, does offer us that lever. So we can kind of require that to be, C, B or A, and not allow F, G or even E to be let. And that will make landlords take some action. In terms of new build, I think that's easy, because every local authority has power through the energy, or what is called Local Energy Act, to put in place standards which are much higher than building regulations. And that's how we got the Bristol Ecotown, honestly. So I think that is possible.
Yeah, so to pick up on a couple of those, partly been covered already. The minimum energy efficiency standards in the private rented sector that you were just talking about, so requiring everything to be energy rated E or above. The City Council is piloting that with piloting a more ambitious approach than that with some money from BIS and from Baines, that's the relevant government department. And I think, as you said, there is hopefully going to be a consultation about driving that up nationally, so that will help us. I was talking to a table over here also about we have a licensing scheme in the city for houses in multiple occupation, and we are considering whether or not we might be able to apply to the Secretary of State to have a broader licensing scheme, and that's where you get private landlords to sign up to certain standards. That wouldn't give us additional powers to require them over and above that on energy efficiency, but it might help us to be able to drive some improvements across that sector. On the new build point, I think it was what my slide showed around planning powers that we will, as long as our local plan is found sound by the inspector and he thinks it's reasonable, we're hoping that we will be able to require that. To pick up on I think to add to putting pressure on private landlords, one of the tables I was talking to was actually talking about, well, if we don't necessarily have the powers, is there more that we could do about to engage, encourage, build awareness, and have a bit of a campaign that reaches out to the 75% of homes that are in private ownership. I did mention Cosy Homes Oxfordshire, which is a place where you can go and get advice and help on that. But I think there is something in terms of a citywide campaign involving lots of partners to try and emphasise that. There might be others that I was supposed to answer. Let me have a view and I'll pass you over.
Okay, I think a little bit similar to Rajat. The discussions on education options for builders, why aren't building regs tighter and can they be improved, and sort of construction workmanship. I think the debate is also partly the actual metrics that we're using. Everyone's spoken about EPCs, these energy performance certificates for buildings, but Rajat and I know that these can be gamed. And that's the brutal truth. And it is about what you can actually do to get that education so that you actually get the quality delivery right. So I would be looking at possibly what is there for mandating a standard. So I wouldn't necessarily say it's about educating contractors and the design teams. It might be more about educating the inspectors to apply the standards that are required. The problem the inspectors have in the UK is they have to know everything. I'm a building physicist. I don't know everything, not even close. There are specialists in fire. There are specialists in mobility in buildings. I specialise literally in the physics of the building. So getting an inspector to be responsible for all of that, I think there might be other ways of looking at how do we manage things, who is responsible for what, how do we actually make our reports. And there is a discussion I'm having with a lot of manufacturers at the moment about them being the people that educate your contractors to how to install their products correctly to achieve what they're trying to do. So hopefully we'll start to see that come out over the next few years, that they're going to start delivering the training. There is training out there for the top end. Not many people do it. There is training provided by the AECB, provided by Passive House, provided by the STBA. These are all different organisations that operate at that high level in construction and know what needs to be done. There's the Retrofit Coordinator, which Rajat mentioned, and getting people onto that training programme. But my mind is actually, I think we need to get the suppliers involved with delivering. We need to hold the suppliers to account that if their products aren't being used properly, why are they not telling people? And the education on that side. So along those lines, you've got the argument about can building regs be tighter? Yes, a lot. But that'll take work. They're working on that at the moment. I'm expecting to see some of my colleagues that are working on it. I'm expecting to see something in about a month's time on parts of it. And that will affect everything, but that won't be an end game. There are still further stages to go through, and until someone takes the leap and goes, we are aiming for this standard, people will just improve things on a small bit by a small bit basis. And that's just that part of that discussion to work out where you want that target to eventually go.
I'll have a go at the first question, which was, you know, what's the
I've already
single
asked
one?
the first question.
And what I'll do is, because there's a report here that actually says what you can do to improve. So the first thing is draft proofing. Put insulation in, put your insulation in, but draft proofing. LED light bulbs, appliances with high efficiency ratings. Set thermostats no higher than 19 degrees C, and water temperature in heating systems no higher than 55. And then, you know, at the top of it, consider low carbon heating systems, heat pumps, and moving off the gas grid. I mean, in future, you won't be able to buy gas boilers. You know, so new build is easier. I'm not saying it's easy, but it's easier than retrofit. And most of it is behaviours. Most of it can help, as I said before, and I'll repeat it. You know, if you want to be a net zero carbon city, you have to be a net zero carbon citizen. And think about everything that you do that contributes to the carbon. So I think that has the ability to actually, you know, reduce down every single one of us in this city. And I don't know how many we have in the city now. How many people are in the city? There you go. Yeah. But I mean, if everybody thinks about what their contribution is and reduces it, that will have a huge effect. And it might be 85% of buildings, but it's 99% of the built environment in this country already exists. 99%. The only new built 0.5% across the whole country. So it's up to every single one of us in this room and outside. And then awareness, and somebody talked about it. Is there some way that we can raise awareness and make it, you know, I look at plastic bags. Who'd have thought a 5p levy on plastic bags in supermarkets would have such a major change? I tell you, government didn't. And we're quite shocked by the fact. So it is those things that if it becomes, and now if you go in there and you see, I see people, if you get a plastic bag, people look at you as though you're kind of, you know, oh my God, they bought a plastic bag. So behaviours for me, and that doesn't cost as much.
Isabella had a question. Oh, Alex, do you want to, because Alex one more thing to say, and then do you want to ask the question?
Sorry, just before that goes on, I've just got something which is a bit of a personal bugbear on these reports that come out. So, because I see them time and time again, that actually the easiest things to do is this, this and this. And this is a particular report, again, which I've seen has come across my desk. So, we're told to reduce our water to 55 degrees, but at the same time we've got a building regulations requirement that our water must be at 60 degrees per Legionella. We're told that we ought to block up and stop drafts coming in. You stop drafts coming in, most people, their automatic reaction is to go to their windows and stop the vents. That causes ventilation problems in the building, causes mould growth, causes problems with health. And the amount of times I've been involved in a number of court cases around this, we've been advised to do this, and it's done this. Well, yeah, from a physics point of view, it's obviously going to do that. So there's a number of these items which are put forward with the right concept. It is to change behaviour. Behaviour has a massive part to play in it. But these generalisations, and I'm sorry to people that write these reports, are dangerous in a number of situations. And we've got to be very careful about that. So in such situations where you've got drafts coming in around the edges of windows, absolutely. You block the windows, you block the doors, you block what comes around them. You do not block the ventilation aspects. Now, simple item on ventilation, and I don't know the answer to this. What's the right ventilation for a space? I'll tell you what, you've been for a run, you've had a shower, someone's been cooking for 10 minutes. I'll tell you what, I've got to open my window at 30 degrees for 2.5 minutes. Oh no, actually 2.8 minutes. Sorry, what? No, it doesn't work that way. No one knows how to operate it. So these are the debates that we've got to start to get into, is to actually, what are the standards? How do we apply it? What is the right thing? Just saying block your items that come forward, I wouldn't be saying that. It's got to be slightly more detailed for people if we want to change their behaviour. It is one of those things where people are saying, do this, do this, do this, and you throw everything out, and then it becomes a problem. So, I'm sorry, David, I had to come back on that because I've seen those reports come. But it's that type of thing that happens, and Rajat, I know, has seen this because we've worked on some government research projects along this line together. These type of items happen quite a lot.
Isabella, you had a question
Yeah, just getting
for the panel.
grabbing a bonus question. Chin, do you want to ask your question? Yeah.
Sorry, it just occurred to me when you guys were talking, and then also the theme before about waste management. So the question about waste management of the building industry, and how do you practice the 3 R's within the, like, reduce, reuse, recycle within the building industry? Is that a question?
There are standards out there, very much that do that, and you can do it. So on the non-domestic side, you've got things like BREEAM, or other people know it as BREEAM, and they have certain metrics by which you can measure. There's not much when you get down to individual residential private properties at all. But on the larger scale, there are certain definitely metrics about reduce, reuse, and recycle. Less on the recycle, but that's more about getting items out. There's aspects of design. So when the designers come in, that they don't design a room that requires 1.5 plasterboard, 1.5 plasterboard, 1.5 plasterboard, everything cut. So you design rooms around the size of plasterboard, so the application is quicker, there's less waste. There's lots of things that can be done. BREEAM has methodologies for it. There are other items out there that also have methodologies for it. There are other standards there which work for the health of the building and for the materials. We certainly had a question around embodied carbon in materials, and there are standards which deliver on that side as well. So there's a lot of items that are out there to do all of this, but people don't necessarily pick them up, and it's down to an individual client to say, we want it here.
Could I just add, because I've remembered, it's about 156,000, depends on students and stuff. But I just wanted to pick up on, I think one of the questions we had was about, or a suggestion about doing an analysis across the city in terms of what's the art of the possible, what can be retrofitted. And I mean, I think that I have no idea how much it would cost or practically how possible it is, but it seems something like that would be a very sensible thing to do, so that we can tell a clear story, and it can help us inform, where we target our efforts in working with partners and communicating with people. I don't know if any of the experts have a view on how possible that is.
I think the thing to add here is that we've been doing some of that as part of an ongoing project called Lost Futures, where we've been working with Rose Hill Community Group to try and look at their housing stock, see how much it will cost. We've tried to kind of develop typical archetypes and see to what extent you can do a deep energy retrofit of a single house or maybe a whole street, and see how much it costs. And that's how those maps that I was showing were created. I think the other thing I want to mention is also that your question about reducing, reusing and recycling, there are now innovations happening in the building industry where you take measurements very quickly and then you do laser cutting of insulation off-site, and you bring that inside in your home and just kind of put it together like a puzzle. So you almost have no waste on site. And I think the building industry needs to learn from those techniques that are rapidly developing. There are robots now which can insulate floors and get to places under the floor which a normal human being couldn't. And that's happening. There are products out there. So, I think what happens in the building industry, as I was saying, I think on this table, that is more like a cottage industry. The industrialization of the building industry in UK is pretty slow. And I think that's what we need to now work on to make these things happen quicker, I think.
Okay, one last point then.
Can I reply? And again, if we get away from housing stock, so in schools, we already are on manufacturing schools. We're on our 5th generation now of schools which are MMC. So when you're building new, it's a lot easier to get less waste. As was mentioned, when you have an old house, it's not necessarily the same shape, and walls aren't what they build plasterboard in now, and that. But if you start to look at major infrastructure projects, they look at waste to landfill because it costs. You start to look at utility companies, and they're again looking at it because they are going to carbon zero. So new stuff, the manufacturing and all the technologies can go. Retrofit is so much more difficult, and as was mentioned earlier, there's a lot of retrofit to do.
Alex is insisting on one final point, and then we're going to wrap that up.
Yeah, so just based on those 2 points, these are the ways forward. But funnily enough, innovation doesn't happen without people having a target above what they've currently got to do to achieve it. So if you put a target in that people have got to go to that step further, they start to look for ways to go to that step further. These are both examples, perfect examples of how to go there. But when you've got the standard, you then force things to go forward.
Thank you very much. So thank you very much to our final panel for today.